right. Welcome to another episode of Black Representation in the Curriculum, where we have conversations about teaching, equity, and belonging. I'm truly thrilled to have Dr. Stanton Belford today. He is a marine biologist, so we get a completely different take thinking about learning and thinking about education. So welcome, Dr. Belford.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I want to begin with just having you talk about yourself, and then we'll go
Sure.
from there.
Sure. Well, I am currently the department head of math and sciences. So to get here, so that's the end part. But the beginning part is I grew up on a small Caribbean island, Trinidad and Tobago.
Nice.
And so, from an early stage, we're always connected with the beach. So public holidays, we're going to the beach, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
I was just fortunate to have a high school teacher, Dr. Carol Draper, that initially took us, the class, for a 5-day, overnight trip. We'd stay, imagine this, high schoolers, the guys on one side, the girls on one side. We're going down to the reefs, discovering different species because we've never seen them before. Or if we had, we didn't know their names. So we actually felt like scientists because, we would design experiments, pulling pigments from algae. And I mean, it was amazing just to have to go through an entire day just filled with experiments. So it's 2 low tides. So sometimes we'll get a low tide early in the morning, and then we have gone out at night as well. And, this actually stuck with me. Really go on this journey that I never imagined would be this fulfilled with just knowing, I would say, as last year, for 20 years, I've been doing research on actually the same site, one of the sites that Dr. Draper took us to. And I can say I probably just know maybe a tiny little bit about the ocean.
Wow.
Just because it's so vast. But if we take coral reefs, which actually are, they are, first of all, amazing. Second of all, from a financial perspective, you have the fishing industries, you have crabs, lobsters, scallops, tourism. Of course, they benefit against storms. And somehow I landed in the United States on a soccer scholarship in 1996. And that's all I could think of with regards to, first of all, getting an undergraduate degree in biology and then a master's degree in biology. Now, there's a misconception. People think you have to get the marine biology degree to do marine biology. Well, here I am with neither. I did take a marine biology course in grad school, but to be honest, I think once I learned to scuba dive, so I took a scuba diving class. I think that opened up so many opportunities for me.
Wow.
I was able to, scuba dive, Florida, the Red Sea, and still scuba diving. But it opened up a lot of opportunities for me. Being able to go to scuba dive in the Red Sea was, you talk about vintage, epic, amazing diving, clear water up to 200 feet. I just can't believe it.
Wow. Oh goodness, you said so much there. So I've been fascinated, I have to say. We had chatted a little bit about your upbringing. You talked about going to do these experiments at the beach, at the sea. Were you talking about being in Trinidad?
Yes.
Okay.
So started there as a high school project.
Okay.
So we have our national exams. And one of the question is from the project you did. You have to
Mhm.
describe your project, yeah, methods. And remember, these are handwritten exams. So
Yep, I do remember.
you have like a 3 hour
Huh?
timeline and you just have to write like quick.
Everything you know.
Yes. Uh-huh. And I did that twice,
Mhm.
and both exams, those the results for these questions were always my top questions.
Wow.
Yeah.
So would you say in some ways, what led you here is a love of the ocean? Because I know you had talked
Mhm.
about your dad,
Right.
if you don't mind. So expanding, what is that love of the ocean and that relationship you talked about with your dad?
Yes.
What led you here? Is it that? Is it something else?
I guess it's a mixed bag
Mhm.
because well, you have to start somewhere. So my dad's family was from the northern coastal village in Trinidad called
Mhm.
Blanchisseuse.
Oh,
It's
what?
still Blanchisseuse.
Mhm.
It's still a fishing village, just
Mhm.
like where I do my research now in Trinidad. It's
Mhm.
at Toku, which is also known as a fishing village. So it was very close knit communities, but he is the one that took me, and this was 7, 8, 9 years old, put me on his shoulders, and we would ride the waves. He would cup his hand and say, "Here, drink," you know, drink the ocean water, spit it out in disgust. And, that was when he said, and now you will never forget the ocean. And I really enjoyed that.
Wow.
Now, I lost dad when I was 9 years old.
I'm sorry.
So these memories are
Yeah.
burnt into my brains because, we will at some point in time we will all lose our parents.
Mhm.
So with those, well, losing parent at a very young age
Mhm.
does have an effect on you.
Absolutely.
Um, I I can tell you this: there is a building here on campus
Mhm.
where you could purchase bricks
Mhm.
and have the name of the person as a dedication. The brick is on the pathway to the building.
Wow.
Yeah. So every time I go to that building, I see his name, I see my mom's name, my grandmother's name. And,
Mhm.
I always wonder if I have done enough to one, make the Belford name, um, a well respected,
Mhm.
hardworking name. And two, just make him proud.
Mhm.
His family, members of his family always tell me, man, your dad would be so proud.
Wow.
But it seems like I always want to do a little bit more. It's because, we all want our kids to know better than us.
Right.
I tell my students, hey, I got 4 degrees, but I want you all to get 5. They look at me funny, but,
Yeah.
I tell them all the time, hey, it took me 18 years of being in college.
Mhm.
I tell the middle schoolers that, I tell the high schoolers that.
Wow.
Catherine, they look at me, oh my gosh, so long you stayed in school? But I
Yeah.
and when they say that, I tell them, well, I got 2 trips
Mhm.
to the Red Sea. I
Wow.
got a trip to Malawi, Africa. I mean,
Mhm.
all these were opportunities that I got in graduate school.
Mhm.
So don't stop because you never know what opportunities lay out there. If I had not gone to Middle Tennessee State University
Mhm.
to do my master's, I would not have learned how to scuba dive.
Mm.
So when I got to Auburn University,
Yeah.
my former advisor said, well, I've got 2 grants, one to look at shrimp and sea anemones in the US Virgin Islands,
Mhm.
and one to look at clownfish and sea anemones in the Red Sea. Which one you want? I said, well, I'm from the Caribbean. I don't want to do Caribbean. I want to do the Red. Who would not want to scuba dive in the Red Sea? And I always had to get my world traveler pics
Mhm.
for my Instagram. So
Mhm.
I always wanted to make sure, I could share the ocean as well. And that's the thing. Science communication has become such an important thing
Mhm.
in marine biology. You
Yeah.
know, I've got it on my TikTok. I got it on my website, Instagram, it's because it's who I am. The chair I'm sitting in, green. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, the color of the symbionts in the coral. I mean, it's all related. Blue in my background, picture of the ocean. I mean, it's all related to what you do. I guess I'm consumed by marine biology. Even though I'm in Tennessee,
That's
I'm still surrounded by it. Yep.
And it seems like you don't share the fear that I know of several of us, even people growing up in the islands, the fear of the water and the
Yes,
associations you make with the water.
that is so true. Once again, a misconception that everyone in the islands, enjoys the water.
Mhm.
No, I know many people that are scared.
Yeah.
I give you one more. An organization, a huge part of Black and Marine Science, or BIMS. I am heading down to St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands,
Yeah.
where they have an immersion program.
Mhm.
So they train kids um, who have not, don't have open water scuba certification
Mhm.
or advanced train. They take 12 students
Wow.
and they get certified. And this is one of the most successful programs in the BIMS organization.
Wow.
Training each year, going to different parts of the Caribbean, to Florida, and
Mhm.
training. I mean, there's such a thing called BIMS swims. Just taking local kids
Yeah.
and getting them used to being in the water, not scared,
Mhm.
teaching them how to float, how to swim. I
Yeah.
think the main thing is confidence.
Yeah.
Just giving them that confidence.
Mhm.
We live on a water world. I was telling my students that yesterday. It's 70% water. So at some point in time, I mean, water is inside us, we have to keep replenishing that. At some point in time, we're going to connect with the ocean. Catherine, I have taken students to Trinidad.
Mm.
They have never been on a plane, never left the state of Tennessee.
Well,
And when they see the ocean for the first time, they can't believe that it's so much water. They can't believe, the vastness of the ocean.
yeah.
Even though I'm just trying to make my mark on a tiny
Mhm.
speck
Wow.
called the coral reefs.
Wow. Yeah, I guess keep us on the 30% here.
Yes.
No? So I want to just segue in talking about your work because your work has been integral to everything you do. I'm curious about, tell us a journey in terms of your research, where your
Sure.
research started, and you could start as early on as you'd like, and where it led you. I'm just, you know,
Yes. So I had one thing I can say about Dr. Draper is in high school, she always wanted us to take notes to record.
mm,
So I actually have a recording.
mm-hmm.
So a book, this little notebook from high school, amazingly
Wow.
has notes of being on the reefs. I wonder if I can find, golly, notes of being on the reefs. So
And that's
it's
high
funny.
school.
Yes, this is well,
Yeah.
I'm not going to show the 1993 here, but when I got to Middle Tennessee State University,
Mm-hmm.
I could think of nothing else to do but research on these very reefs here.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while to find an advisor, but when I did, he said, and that was Dr. Mullen
Mm-hmm.
at MTSU. He said, I don't know much about marine ecosystems because he actually did a lot of his research on streams. So he
Mm-hmm.
said I had to reach out to someone in at the University of the West Indies in Trinidad.
Mm-hmm.
And so this segues into meeting Dr. Dawn Phillip.
Mm-hmm.
So when they tell graduate students, reach out to professors in
Mm-hmm.
an email, have a statement of purpose, and just connect with the faculty, it is true. It was true when many years ago for me. and it is true now. And we had a conversation via email. I was able to meet her.
Mhm.
And so that started the process. She was like, well, she took her students.
Mm,
She had a class
mhm.
and they were doing research on Sylvia Bay on the reefs there,
Okay.
the only fringing reef in Trinidad. And so she said, well, we can do a benthic survey
Mhm.
to stretch out a straight line. And we just calculated the different corals, algae, whatever invertebrates we saw, sea anemones, sea urchins, sea cucumbers.
Mhm.
And that became two-thirds of my master's.
Mm.
It was one of my committee members, Dr. Jeff LeBlanc at MTSU, said, it would be good to add something genetic, something molecular.
Mm.
So he said something about the symbionts living in the corals. So I had to travel to meet one of the world's top person on that, Dr. Todd Lejeunesse. So, Catherine, can you imagine? Do you remember when you had to print out MapQuest and you had the huge maps in the cars? You had no GPS, no nothing. You
Mhm.
got lost 3 times. You stopped in a gas station. How to get back to I don't know if you remember traveling like that, but
We would buy the big maps. We would just
yes, the big
stop at the gas
large,
stations and
large one at the gas
yep,
station. Yeah.
rest
And
it on the
that's
car and look.
yes. Yeah, that's how I got to Florida International University.
Yeah.
Met him and then met another professor at Auburn University. And so it's the molecular part that really put me over the hump
Mm.
in the masters.
Okay.
And here's the thing, I have not done anything molecular until that point in time.
Mhm.
And so that kind of enhanced, I must say, what I'm doing today.
Mhm.
5 years ago, I really, really did a lot on molecular genetics because there were many species on the reefs that are cryptic. They look different.
Mhm.
So you have different colors, but here's the thing. They're the same species.
Mm.
And so one such species are the zoantherians,
Mhm.
which is what I do my research in a lot. These are anemone-like invertebrates, but man, you talk about a carnival in the ocean. So many different colors, varieties, and the only way you can really identify them is doing molecular analysis.
Mm.
So most of my research now, within the last 5 years, my last like 5 publications
Mhm.
on sea urchins and zoantherians literally has a molecular analysis piece. Yep.
And why study them? I mean, I
Mhm.
noticed that here in the US there's not a whole lot of marine bio. I actually
Mhm.
know someone who wrote a marine bio text. And
Mhm.
you might even be familiar with who she is. I've just noticed that it's not a whole lot of, I mean, we do a little bit of, we talk about the benthic zones and stuff like that. We talk about environmental science, but separately for marine bio, I don't get the impression that it's as, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about that, that it's as promoted. So tell me a little bit about that and why study sea urchins and why study you said it zoanthorans.
Yes, yes.
And
Well,
so
I can tell
what are
you,
some advantages?
well, during the pandemic,
Uh-huh.
so I had the same thinking as well. But during the pandemic, I joined an online virtual conference, and this
Uh-huh.
is through Black and Marine Science.
Uh-huh.
So Dr. Tara Moore, who's my favorite CEO, because I can message her anytime and she'll respond within the hour.
Uh-huh.
How many CEOs of a multi-million-dollar organization you can
Wow.
do that with? But actually, BIMS has brought a lot of marine scientists together. And
Uh,
so what I have learned is there are a few like me
uh-huh.
who are in academia
Mm,
There are those that are doing marine biology policy, the
mhm,
policymakers.
mhm,
There are those in the marine aquatic zoos doing
mhm,
research here. There are upcoming students in doing different things from seaweed to deep water. I
mhm,
mean, so I used to think, well, marine biology is only about coral reefs.
mm,
But then there's the conservation folks, there's the
mm,
policy folks. And because of that, I mean, I've been fortunate to, so last year I went to Mombasa, Kenya in a summer program with the West Indian Ocean Science group there. And there are I met students from Seychelles, from
mhm,
Maldives, from Tanzania. I mean,
mm.
and they're all doing marine related work. Once
Nice.
again, some in policy, some in actual research, seaweed. So my mind has expanded because now when I thought, well, there's not much marine biology here in the US, there actually is
Mm,
because you have these younger scientists.
mhm,
And when I started with BIMS, they were doing their masters and PhDs. Now, 5 years later, they're doctors. We've published all BIMS article together, and there's more students coming up behind them.
mm,
We're a resource for them as well.
mhm,
And so now I'm also a resource for a whole on the other side of the world
mhm.
where the West Indian Ocean, there's a lot of research and researchers there as well. And I'm so excited about that. It's like I got a refreshing boost
Yeah.
as a marine biologist, which is good for me
Mhm,
because, being a department head over math, biology, chemistry, computer science, and cybersecurity. I mean, I get bogged down a lot with the logistics, trying to improve programs, trying to recruit more students. Look, within the last year, we've been working on agricultural sciences.
mm.
So, I've been doing a lot of land-based stuff.
Right.
So traveling to these different parts of the world and meeting the students and the researchers and the scientists.
Mhm.
Ooh, I love it. I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I used to think that way
Mhm,
until I actually, been around BIMS. I've been around the West Indian Ocean folks over there. It's
mm,
really opened my eyes to, there's a lot of
mm,
people doing a lot, but we're just siloed,
mhm.
we just share more and share more. And this is where science communication comes in, plays a huge part. Yeah.
I wonder though, I mean, what you said makes a lot of sense to me.
Mhm.
And I wonder if it means on the flip side, there's just so much interest that it's not promoted. Um,
I
in
agree.
some ways,
I agree. Yeah.
because people like to go to the beach naturally, right?
Mhm.
And I know there were several sea grants that several people that I know had, and the issue was, and this kind of crossed over a little bit with the work that I did because when I went to the Gullah Geechee Islands and I did hang out a little bit with some of the fishermen, just listen to the stories. And the goal was to go back and record some of them, and then the pandemic hit. I never
Yes.
really went back to do that. But I mean, now you're mentioning, I was like, it might be a nice goal there because
Yes.
I did
Yes.
get to listen to some of their stories, and the stories of growing up here near the sea is very different.
Mhm.
You get the same pleasure, independence, but you get a lot more. What's the word? Control. You have a lot more strife, and people who seeing the nature of opportunities for someone like you and me. That kind of the goal was to really remove those opportunities, right?
Yes.
And so I collected quite a bit of data on that, but never really had a time to go into it, even though it's always been in the back of my head to explore it. So, yeah, in some ways it does make sense. And I wonder if sometimes I have this I sometimes I tend to see patterns, and a lot of times right now, until I delve into it, they become assumptions, right? But sometimes those assumptions are very close to the truth.
Yes.
And one of the things I've observed is that wherever you have a great number of us that are interested and involved that oftentimes that area is not as promoted per se or as
No,
funded.
I tell you what, I just thought of something along that same line. During the pandemic, one of the things I wanted to do is, well, are there any trainees out there like
Mhm,
interested in marine biology and how did they get started?
mhm,
So I actually started collecting stories
mhm.
and
Yeah,
it was through, it was all online. I
mhm,
hardly spoke to them and, I shared their stories. So on my
mhm,
website, there are stories. So I share my story and then I share the stories of others.
mhm,
And over the last few years, I've been able to meet many of them,
mm.
which like in person for the first time.
Nice.
So it's amazing how you would. So I have to do the same thing. I I have to publish on that.
Mm,
Somehow I have to get that knowledge out there because it's for me it was a parent,
mhm,
right, that started a teacher.
mhm,
For others, it's the same.
mhm,
Their parents will take them to the beach. For others, it's a course at the university.
mhm,
For a few, it's scuba, learn to scuba dive. For other few, an uncle had aquarium,
mm,
and they were so interested in that. So it's a wide range. It's not something consistent. Like it's
mhm.
not one thing.
Yeah.
It's a plethora of many things happening during the early stages, and that's what got a lot of us interested in marine biology.
Mm,
Basic things.
mhm,
It's funny. So I have a friend of mine at Auburn University. He's at the Museum of Natural History at Auburn University.
mhm,
And I think he's in charge of the amphibians and reptiles.
mhm,
And he remember when I asked him about his story, he remember him, his family, his brother or siblings, they would bring frogs and lizards home. And his parents, they didn't mind. They didn't say, oh, get those things out of there. They
mhm.
were like, all right, let's see what you got. And they were so interested. Well, guess what? He's now interested in, he would, on a rainy night, he would call me. He's like, hey, you want to go frog gigging?
Mhm,
I've never done that in my life, but guess what? That's how he collected frogs and salamanders and stuff like that. And,
mm,
he has a terrarium, aquarium, and students will come and see, I mean, snakes live.
mhm.
He would show them about snakes because, all of us are scared of snakes.
I've noticed that. Now, where is he, by the way?
He's at Auburn University,
Okay, okay.
David Lawrenceo.
I don't know how many parents are gonna let their kids bring reptiles. I'm just curious
I
what kind of
know, that's the
reptiles
thing.
you're talking
Yeah,
about.
I interviewed him and he said, yeah, they would bring in frogs and lizards and, he said his parents never once fussed. But I think he was native to Costa Rica as well.
Mm,
And Costa Rica is a hotspot in biodiversity.
yeah.
So,
Wow.
you have to learn to live with, your environment. And so
Mhm.
these are animals of the environment. So
Yeah.
yeah, they were accustomed to it and they never, yeah, I can do it. I can do it. I mean, mom never really knew much about, all she knew is that I was doing research on the reefs.
Mhm.
Like I couldn't really explain, zoantherians or this species or that species, but she knew I was doing stuff on the reefs in
Mm.
Tuku.
Wow.
Parents, they play a huge. I always tell my students, please don't keep your kids inside. Like take your kids outside. Let
Mm.
them. My ecology students, we
Yeah.
hold crayfish. Right, we catch them, we hold them. I tell them all the time, if you don't hold a crayfish, then you fail the course. I'm joking, but I want them to be comfortable doing that.
Mhm.
I have a 135-gallon saltwater tank. You got sea urchins, you got corals, you got
Wow.
different fish, clownfish. And when we have visitors, I always pull a sea urchin out or I have a serpent star,
Uh,
pull it out and let them and hold it. And you'll be surprised. The coaches would tell me, hey, you know, because of you, the basketball player is going to come to UT Southern, or this volleyball player because of you. Because guess what? They're coming with their parents,
mm-hmm.
and their parents realize, my goodness, I mean, they are really, you know, we try to connect with students
Mm-hmm.
before we intro.
Yeah.
So we connect with the students and the parents way before they even make a decision.
Right.
Hey, so far I'm at 100%. Everyone, they come through
Yeah.
summertime, I have to shut my door if I want to get like a lot of work done because students' parents are in all the time. But I don't mind. I
Wow.
love taking a break and pulling a Syrian out and letting them hold it. And I love doing that. I think I
Wow.
do that with my grandkids, just trying to get them
Mm-hmm.
used to, being one, caring for living things, and two,
Mm.
not afraid to experience it.
Wow.
They asked Dr. Sylvia Earle, what advice would you give for all of us who want to know about the ocean?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, just go visit, just go to the ocean. Yeah, just experience it.
Makes
And
sense.
yeah, that's fortunately thus far I've had positive experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I must admit, some people, like friends I know, they would not put their feet in the ocean because they may have had a bad experience.
Right.
So, I don't fuss with them. I know they have a reason, but I'm going in, I'm going in.
Yeah. I guess yeah, I guess I can understand where they're coming from. Yeah, I guess, and you don't really have to do a whole lot of selling, right, for the ocean
No.
or for the water. I mean, you without even saying anything, you've given them experiences.
Mhm.
In some ways, it's reminding me of entomology, right? Looking at
Yes.
insects and all of that.
Yeah.
It's just, I could see just the experience selling some of those. It's some things I used to do with my, my son. I shouldn't say, as a family, we used to go to those things, and probably mostly his dad would take him to areas where they had. But I imagine proximity to the ocean does matter.
Yes. Museums play and aquariums play a huge role as well. Hey,
Mm,
that's the concept with the touch tank.
with the touch tank.
Yeah, every so I've
Yeah.
been to Monterey, I've been to what's that one in Atlanta? I've been
Hmm.
to that one. I've been to one, what's the other one in Massachusetts? I mean, it's amazing, So they get the kids to touch the horseshoe crabs
Hmm.
in the touch tanks. I mean, everywhere you have these touch tanks. San Diego, I've been to that one too.
Hmm.
The touch tanks are there so that the little kids don't become scared.
Mm.
There is a small counteraction to that
Mm.
because you don't want to always want to touch everything, everything. Yeah, some things
Yeah.
you just need to let be,
Hmm.
and just enjoy from, with your eyes. And that's the thing. Sometimes, so I always wonder about the folks that want to touch a bear cub, or take a selfie
Yeah.
with, you know, a
The grizz
carnivore in the background.
the grizzly bear in Yellowstone or things like that.
Yes, you see these crazy, oh my gosh, why would you do that? No, just enjoy it from, you know, I mean, I see chain moray eels or green eels all the time
Mhm.
on the reefs. All right. Yes, they look like snake and they look ferocious, but an eel will let you come reasonably close to take a photo.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean I'm going to touch it and pet it. No, it's in its natural setting.
Right.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I know sea urchins. I know how to pick up the species that don't penetrate their spines in you.
Mhm.
But the species that can, nope, I'm watching and I'm taking a photo. That's it. I'm not going to put, you know, in the islands, the closest health center
Mm-hmm.
maybe miles away if you are on the coastal village. Yeah, so
That's
you
not
know,
bad. That's
you
not
gotta
good.
take precaution. Yeah,
Wow.
enjoying nature and
Yeah.
enjoy it, and don't leave your footprint. You just leave after that.
I wonder if our fear comes from prior experiences.
Probably, yeah,
I
probably,
mean, we could
yeah.
talk about tons of them, but I do think though a healthy fear of the ocean is a good thing.
Yes,
No,
yes.
I'm always concerned, especially
Also, a healthy love of it as well,
that's true.
because a healthy love of it will make you want to preserve it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, take,
Wow.
you know, leave less of a negative mark on it.
Mm, I see what you're saying. Wow. So wow. So I'm wanting to go back to some of the things you were researching and looking into, and what are some things that over the years you've been curious about and delved into,
Mhm.
questions you might have asked.
So, while doing reef surveys many years ago with Dr. Dolman Phillip, we would notice sea urchins.
Mhm.
And she would always say, Stanton, we got to get to those one day. So eventually one day, so Dawn has gone on. And so I always wanted to, so the reason why I do what I do partially is because she always talked about monitoring the reefs like for a lifetime.
Mm.
So most of the work I do, continuing, taking students, mentoring students, is actually because of her, because she
Mhm.
took time to mentor me as a student.
Mhm.
I'm trying to do the same as well. But
Mhm.
she was always talking about sea urchins. And
Mm.
so my last two papers are on sea urchins.
Mhm.
First, a survey of their size and abundance. But then secondly, looking at the species in the entire Caribbean.
Mhm.
So from as far as Key Largo, Florida, all the way down to Trinidad. And
Mhm.
so I've had students doing the genetic analysis on the species.
Mhm.
And so there are two color morphs, a red one and a black one on the reefs.
Mhm.
And depending on where you are on the reefs, if you're in open water or if you're protected by huge rocks in the ocean,
Mhm.
well, your size changes. So I had a student, she's graduated now from UT Southern, Destiny Newman.
Mhm.
She spent a year doing the molecular analysis, and I was finally able to take her and two other students from UT Southern
Mhm.
to Trinidad last year. So
Mhm.
all three of them have done research, the molecular, the genetics part in the labs,
Mhm.
but they haven't been on the reefs to do like the surveys and actually see, where their research specimens come from.
Mhm.
So Destiny in her last semester, I tried to get her to do research, same genetics on crayfish,
Mhm.
freshwater crayfish here in Pulaski.
Okay.
Because when I'm not in the ocean, I got to do, I got to do something. So freshwater. And she said, "Let me think about it." And then she finally said, "I just want to do sea urchins." So her persistence really, really. So she did sea urchins.
Mhm.
I might say the molecular aspect.
Mhm.
You just take a small spine
Mhm.
from the urchin and we crush that spine up and we extract the DNA from it.
Mhm.
And she did that for a lot of urchins.
Mhm.
And one day, so we were looking at the sequences to determine the species, and it just hit me by surprise. Wait a minute. The urchins are missing one base pair at a particular spot.
Mm.
And that is determining if it's a bright red color morph
Mhm.
versus a black color morph.
Wow.
And I always tell her this, and I've told her parents this, I've told her grandparents this, her siblings this. I said, it wasn't for her being persistent. Her and I was able to determine that just one change, the difference between human genetics and chimpanzees, 4%.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you see the difference,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So the same thing here. It was one base pair, and there was a difference there. So I share that story a lot
Yeah.
of one, the persistence of a student, and two, the discovery. Because if we had said that, all right, crayfish would never have revealed that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were able to reveal that. And she went to a couple of conferences and presented research on that
Mm.
as that.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of one of my amazing stories
That is
of,
amazing.
yeah. Yeah. There's others on the zoantherians,
Mm-hmm.
where initially what Dr. Phillip and I thought was one species,
Mm-hmm.
because I've learned these new techniques. And I learned this new technique from Dr. James Remer,
Mm-hmm.
who is like the world's foremost experts on zoantherians. And so he was a reviewer of one of my manuscripts, and he recommended I do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a new technique. And what Dawn and I thought was a specific zoantherian species
Mm-hmm.
was not,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it turned out to, we made two like discoveries on, wait a minute, we thought this was one species, but it's actually a different one. And so you have to do the molecular analysis to complement, the visual as well. And so I find myself doing that because apparently I'm the only person that has done this type of research in this particular area.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the conservation of reefs are in Tobago,
Mm.
right? So I have gotten in contact with the folks from the Institute of Marine Affairs of
Mm-hmm.
Trinidad and Tobago. They invited me to do a talk on my research in February, which
Wow.
is really neat because they are the governing body of protection for the reefs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got into connection with them as well. And hopefully there are future collaborations and a few more manuscripts to
Mm.
publish as well. So it's continued. It's a rejuvenation in my career.
Yeah.
So this next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be a lot of writing,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of sharing the discoveries,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of traveling as well, because a huge part of what I do also is mentoring
Mm-hmm.
the next generation. So it's mentorship of students doing research, them presenting at conferences, myself as well,
Mm-hmm.
presenting at other conferences as well.
Yeah.
It's a lot of traveling in the future.
Wow.
Hey, which I'm fine with. Yeah, I'm fine with. Yeah. I told my supervisor this, and I said, "Hey, life of a marine biologist, a lot of sky miles." He said,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, no, just do what you need to do."
Well, no, no. I know, and maybe when I talked about this, because sometimes the trend of traveling does include spending our own money.
Yes, yes. But you know what?
Just
Every now and
that out
then,
there.
yeah, every now and then you get sponsorship, and
That's good.
it's something good to keep you focused. Um, going. I'm doing research on a part of the ocean. Last year, March made it 20 years.
Wow.
And somehow, at
Mm-hmm.
some point in time, apparently I've become the expert.
Mm.
A few years ago, uh, I was able to join the university professors and students
Mm-hmm.
out on the reefs as well.
Yeah.
And, I was going to dinner and they were doing a presentation,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw my paper out there. The professor was going over the paper as well there. Oh my gosh.
Mm.
I said, Stanton, overnight, you somehow became an expert,
Yeah.
which is fine
Yeah.
because now, you have to mentor and train others coming up.
Hmm.
Now you got to collaborate, give advice, things like that. And I
Right.
welcome, yeah, I welcome that a lot.
Hi. Amazing. It's well, a couple things I'm thinking. You were talking about the difference between chimpanzees and humans. You're reminding me of one activity I used to do with students. I used to give them genetic sequences to compare humans with several species. So there are moments when I kind of miss when I was teaching pure biology.
Yes.
But I want to say I do for people who don't know what the coral reefs are and the functions are. Can you expand a little bit on what they are and why study them?
Yes. Corals are actually animals.
Mm-hmm.
So believe it or not, many years ago, they were plants,
Mm-hmm.
which I still get that today from all ages because I have some corals in my small ocean,
Mm-hmm.
135-gallon tank, that they look like trees,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
But they're commonly called Kenya trees.
Mm-hmm.
They look like small trees.
Yeah.
But so it's a teaching moment. So coral is an animal.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's a symbiotic relationship between an animal and an algae. So dinoflagellates, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they live together. Dinoflagellates can
Mm-hmm.
photosynthesize.
Mm-hmm.
Different nutrients and waste are released and interchanged, and they can survive. But here's the thing, because these dinoflagellates are photosynthetic algae,
Mm-hmm.
they do need to be in a certain range
Mm-hmm.
of depth. So
Yeah.
they need sunlight. Now, believe it or not, we do have cold water corals,
Mm-hmm.
which they don't need sunlight. But for the most part, when you think of coral reefs, they actually provide a three-dimensional, I guess, shape
Mm-hmm.
structure,
Yeah.
right? So think of waves coming in, crashing on these reefs,
Mm-hmm.
preventing coastal erosion.
Mm.
In the Caribbean, you see storms. Well, you're seeing more storms, higher velocities. We need these structures to, you know, protect coastal regions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, you get a lot of we get a lot of nutrients from, the reefs. So
Mm-hmm.
think of it, big fish, full of medium-sized fish,
Mm-hmm.
full of small fish. The reefs are nurseries.
Mm-hmm.
What is going on right now at this point in time?
Mm-hmm.
So Lent.
Mm-hmm.
So many people are not eating meat, so they may be eating fish,
Yeah.
right? So now, guess what? In the islands, the Caribbean, guess what's
Mm-hmm.
happening now? Fish prices are a little bit higher now
Mm.
because there's more demand
Mm-hmm.
for it as well.
Yeah.
Things, I mean, I love going to a restaurant about an hour from here
Mm-hmm.
and get my lobster tail and lamb chops, but only on special occasions, all right? A birthday or something. But,
Yeah.
you know, lobsters, you get crabs, you get so many things from the ocean. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
conch, Key Largo, Florida. You can get conch fritters, and conch is a snail, the queen conch.
Mm-hmm.
In places like Jamaica or St. Vincent, Grenadine, St. Lucia, you
Mm-hmm.
know, they can crack that queen conch and ceviche, you know. So some of our
Mm-hmm.
favorite dishes we like come from there. And not to mention, if you're on a honeymoon, on vacation, on a cruise, and you snorkel the reefs,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, it's such a amazing different world. This is why in Tobago you have the glass bottom boats. And
Mm.
so every time I take my students there, they can't believe there's a boat and you can see
Mm.
everything,
Yeah.
under the ocean glass bottom. And then you get a snorkel as well
Mm-hmm.
with them as well.
Yeah.
So it's so many different things. It has been estimated that U.S. Reefs, U.S. territories bring in anywhere from 200 to $300 billion
Mm-hmm.
annually.
Okay.
And that's all related to what we eat, tourism. If I love to scuba dive, guess what? Mask and snorkel may be $35 to $40.
Mm.
Scuba lessons that cost, a wetsuit, a regulator. I mean, renting airfare to travel.
Mhm.
All these costs. So all
Yeah.
these bring in monies. I have a friend who's a tour guide, but he's been trying to get me to do something with the reefs during low tides. He was
Mm.
just showing people as well
Mhm.
what's on the reefs. Because if you show them, they may understand the
Mhm.
reason to protect
Right.
them as well. So, it's like if I'm walking, on, I'm not going to crush an earthworm
Mm.
because I know an earthworm aerates the soil. It's like I know this, so I'm not going to do that.
I
Mm.
remember us playing with earthworms as kids.
Yeah.
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 Just pick it up and
Yeah,
yeah.
of course. Yeah. Because that's the best bait you have for fishing.
Mhm.
Oh, you get the set the already made one, depending on what you're catching. But it was fun to you know, dig for the earthworms, get a bunch of them, and then go to the little creek and because we didn't watch television all that much, right? We didn't have cell phones, so we were like, well, I'm not staying home. I'm going somewhere with my friends.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah. You're going somewhere with your friends and you're gonna learn, you end up learning things because,
yes.
you know,
Whatever
hopefully there was
fruit
water.
tree
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever fruit tree was in season,
Mhm.
you know, hey, there's this mango tree. Let's go,
Right.
there. Or, it was always we were always, you know, gone somewhere doing that. And I'm still friends with my childhood friends till this day.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? Because the nature of our mischief was, in
Yes.
hindsight, more constructive for us than the nature of mischief that that sometimes drives
Yep.
other areas. So on the same note, for people who are not familiar with sea urchins, right, and what they do, can you tell them a little bit about sea urchins and why study them?
Correct. So sea urchins are important on the reefs because they graze on algae.
Mhm.
So corals, their larvae need space to land on a rock and grow. But if there's algae covering an overgrowth, then they don't land on the surface. So actually, the sea urchins control algae growth.
Mhm.
They also do a lot of construction on the reefs.
Mhm.
So they may dig, they may bore into crevices. Hey, they make great homes for small fish that are hiding at night from predators. So they're also dwelling, making homes. But so that's like a key.
Mhm.
Can be keystone species.
Mhm.
So keystone species, of course, if you remove them, man, the entire ecosystem comes crashing down.
Mm.
And so this has been seen a lot in the Pacific,
Mhm.
but so my thing was, as I said before, no one really knew anything about my particular area.
Mhm.
There was some a book published by Dr. Richard Ledu,
Mhm.
and so uh, Dr. Anjani Ganesh of the Institute of Marine Affairs.
Mhm.
The project in the last couple of years was to upgrade, you know, not only reefs of Trinidad, but Tobago as well.
Mhm.
So she reached out to me as well to provide because she knew I was the only one doing research there
Mhm.
at local Trinidad.
Mhm.
And she said, okay, so tell me what you're doing, what's going on. And so I gave her, well, I'm doing stuff on zoantherians and sea urchins,
Mhm.
right? So really, sea urchins, because of their grazers, it's kind of important to know what species we have there
Mhm.
to kind of maintain or keep an eye on their population. Because if you start seeing mass mortality, which is what we saw in the early 80s of the long spine sea urchin, I mean,
Mm,
it caused in the Caribbean, it caused a huge, and I think they said was maybe have been bacteria. So there was
mm,
this massive die off, which of course caused algae to grow over space,
mhm,
especially on coral reefs in Jamaica.
mhm,
And of course, Jamaica has like well known reefs as well.
mhm,
You don't, from that, I think that was the one experience that really had us pay attention of, okay, we need to keep an eye on the sea urchins population abundance.
mhm,
And that's kind of the main reason. he- I didn't know it at the time. Dr. Phillip was saying, hey, we got to do research on sea urchins. But
mhm,
I know it now
mhm.
because of the importance of what they do on the reefs.
Wow. I want to pick your brain on one more thing. One thing that came up, in my interviews with the Gullah Geechee was, especially along the coast here, South Carolina and Georgia and those areas, was just some of the practices, some of the, not only the sea practices, but also one of the practices that the Native Americans and then the African Americans here were doing. We came up with some parallels between what was happening in the coast of Africa and what's happening here on the coast that were inherited. Creating oyster beds was something that came up for sustainability. I don't know, have you done any work related to that or have any insights?
So, no, but through BIMS, I was
Mm-hmm.
able to get the knowledge on it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, we've all seen the videos where you put dirty water in like a small tank
Mm-hmm.
and then you put the oysters
Mm,
and then the oysters
mm,
filter that dirty water. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, oysters are like very important.
mm-hmm.
So it's very important with regards to environment.
Mm,
But in many places, it's a delicacy.
mm-hmm.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I don't know, man, many of the Caribbean, I mean, I grew up eating them
Mm-hmm.
because there were people selling it, in the town where I live
Yeah.
as a little drink.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And so maybe it was last year, a couple of years ago. So the local guy who sells it, I said, hey, how are you able like to get these?
Mm-hmm.
And he said they have to wake up very early, low tide, go out there on the rocks, get them. And it's like so dangerous because then the tides are coming in and
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what they're doing to make a living.
You talking about
But
the
yeah, yeah, yeah. And here's the thing too. For the oysters, they can also, if you're not careful, accumulate toxins
mm-hmm.
because, they're filter feeders.
Mm-hmm.
So on certain times, when there is an, a- an alert on, I don't know, some chemical in the water, they
Mm-hmm.
stop all that.
Mm,
So you're not allowed to sell it until a certain period.
okay.
Oysters, Florida, fried oysters, that's
Mm-hmm.
a big thing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. So let's jump into sustainability. Can we sustain the market for it? And it depends. Depends on who you ask. Oh yeah, the oysters will grow back. Yeah, but if you're taking the adults, you're taking the juvenile. I mean, when is it gonna be sustained if you're taking everything? But yeah, I mean, you talk about an important research. What I've understood from the people that are doing research in it is, I mean, that ecosystem depends a lot on your oyster beds and monitoring them as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested in every time I get someone who's doing oyster, I'm always picking their mind just
Yeah.
and seeing their excitement doing research on oysters. Just like someone may ask me, say, so you do stuff on sea urchins? And I get excited to talk
Mhm.
about the research. I see the same thing in a lot of people. I mean, Queen Quet, if you hear her talk about the gully,
Yeah.
I mean,
She's been
she
one of my
is,
guests.
yeah, I mean, so knowledgeable.
Absolutely.
and really, really passionate about protecting, you know?
Yeah.
And I like that. I try to be like that
Mhm.
because I have a connection with where I have done research for so many years.
Yeah.
I have a connection.
Yeah, it's, interesting. When I was, homeschooling my son, during his 4th and 5th grades, I was very involved with, Smithsonian Citizen Science,
Yes, yes,
which allowed us to, go and sit and help the scientists, with whatever it was that they were working on, whether it had to do with crabs or oysters or, um, right by the Chesapeake.
yes.
So my son, then 4th and 5th grade, had the opportunity to go to some of their projects.
Okay.
Some of them were sea related and some of them were land related. Wow.
Yeah, I tell you what, BIMS has done a lot of work. They have a lot of collaboration with the Chesapeake Bay, uh,
Nice.
with the Gully Gucci as well.
Mhm.
So one thing I must say that has also added excitement is learning environmental DNA or
Mm.
EDN.
Yes.
And so this is where I collab a lot with
Mhm.
Dr. Camille Gaines as well,
Mhm.
because I mean, recently last year,
Mhm.
they expanded from Chesapeake Bay, doing a lot of research in Florida. They did collect at San Diego. Well, she was also part of training while in Mombasa, Kenya,
Mm.
doing EDMA, the collection, going to the lab. And so I was so thankful to be there as well, able to jump
Mhm.
in. But that has really excited me with
So
regards to molecular analysis as well.
so for people who don't know what you're talking about,
All right.
I
Yes.
know we had talked briefly about this.
Yes.
That's the one I meant to ask you about. So what is the environmental DNA and how do you
Right.
go about, just say talk about it for the person who
All
doesn't.
right. So, all right. So, what is environmental DNA? So, animals, organisms, they give off. So, let's talk about mammals. All right. So, us, we leave back here, when we sweat, mucus, even feces as well. And in all these things, you have DNA,
Mhm.
right? So, think of, well, I got to find the sea urchins, get a spine, or I've got to find the zoantherians or sea anemone. I gotta catch a fish, get a fin clip. Ooh, what if I'm doing research on marine sea turtles?
Mhm.
Well, how am I gonna find that? All right. So environmental DNA now, you can do it in many ways. So you can get soil or filter water. So the filtered water is what Dr. Gaines uses a lot,
Mhm.
right? And so you pass through a syringe of just regular ocean water. You pass it through a filter a few times and you preserve the filter, right? Because that eventually traps the DNA. Now it traps DNA of what?
Mhm.
And that's when the sequencing happens. You
Mm.
can get a snapshot at that point in time. You can get um, DNA from everything
Mm.
that was there at a
Right.
snapshot. And this may be 75 things, maybe 125 things,
Mhm.
depending on what you want. But that involves primers and things like that.
Mhm.
But this, no, it's expensive,
Mhm.
right? I mean, it's like a few $1,000s,
Mm.
but you get a snapshot
Right.
of what's there. So a leatherback sea turtle may have been there at that point in time, but
Mhm.
then it gives a presence of
Mhm.
it being there. I no longer have to go on the reefs, do my surveys, and
Mhm.
then rush back and collect when I go on the reefs, I never like bathe. And everyone asks me, it's like, oh my gosh, what? You're on the beach and you don't bathe? No, it's because I'm working. I have like 3 hours maximum low tide, right, to get all this stuff done. And then when I have my samples, well, I got to drive back home and process the samples,
Mhm.
right? So I rarely get to like enjoy, bathe and enjoy.
Mhm.
The only time I get to bathe is if I'm actually not going to work.
Mhm.
So, like, if I'm going to Tobago, so not my research site, I can't just go to my research site and bathe
Mhm.
and not do research,
Mhm.
and that may be collecting eDNA samples or, walking the stretch of the beach
Yeah.
and taking photos of what has washed up. And that's, anywhere from crab, coral, I mean, you name it, you know. And before you know it, it's like 3 hours has
Yeah.
passed. So, yeah, eDNA or environmental DNA,
Mhm.
it's an easier way,
Mhm.
a less stressful way to
Mhm.
collect data. The
Mhm.
only thing is, it's a little bit expensive now, but this is what you find in new techniques.
Mm.
It's like expensive at first, and then later on, if you remember the first Apple computer desktop, I mean, it was huge and so expensive. I mean, you met a friend who their family, you saw it, there's like, ooh, they got money. Now
The
it's,
Apple sign, yeah.
yeah,
Mhm. Apple
yeah,
sign was huge too.
yes, of
Still is,
course.
but not as so, just for clarification, people say because you use the word bathe several times.
Swim.
I want to make sure you're not telling people you didn't take a shower, right? Because you're talking about actually going in the ocean and,
Yes, yes,
just want you to expand on what you meant
yes.
there.
Swim, yes. I should. Yeah. Sometimes I have to, the Caribbean, the US mix. I have to, you're right. I have to
You mean immerse yourself in the ocean
immerse myself. Yes.
because now the environmental DNA is so effective that you don't actually have to go fully into the water.
Yes,
You can
that's
just you
correct.
can just take a sample.
Yes,
Whereas
yes.
you're talking about the enjoyment of going into the water, right?
Yes,
You're
that's
not
correct.
talking
Yes,
about,
yes.
"Oh, I'm taking a shower in the water."
Yes, you're right. You're
I
right.
just have to clarify that for those who are
I'm
listening
glad. Yes, I'm glad you caught that.
because you used the word bathe more than once, so
I
we were
think,
thinking
when I'm talking about, my upbringing,
Mhm.
then I was sticking to the words and the terms
Right.
that were then instead of being more clarifying the terms.
It's okay to explain, it's
No,
okay
that's
for
good.
people to
I
you
like it.
know,
Yeah,
it's
it's a
okay for them to
reminder.
learn huh?
It's a reminder of the connection to the past
Yeah.
and how the present, actually has a lot to do with the connection of the past.
Right. But I think it's also important to note that it's okay for you to say that and be yourself. And if I don't
Yes,
understand, we'll clarify. I
yes,
think we have this perception of things. We have this perception of things where we almost seem to think, and I only say this because I've had people say to me, "Oh, you don't know that," as if I'm supposed to. But when it's reverse, right? People think
yes,
that,
yes,
no, I shouldn't have to explain, but you
yes.
should know that because I grew up that way and you should know that's the standard for you.
Mhm.
And so that's really why I bring it up
Yeah,
because I'm
I got
always
you.
attuned to
Yes,
what are thinking about differences and
yes,
meanings and what it means. But, you know, I say that to say it's okay to use those different terms. We'll just be learning more about you
yes,
by asking, and that's okay.
yes, yes, yes,
You don't have to conform to.
yes.
Yeah.
You got it. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. Wow. So, I know we can keep talking about this, but to wrap this up, what do you want to leave the audience with? What picture of, your work in marine science and who you are, what do you want to, leave the audience with who wouldn't know necessarily anything about this?
So, if you're interested about the stories of others, you can see these stories on my website, stantonbelford.com. I'm also doing stories of being a marine biologist. So BIMS has their Ocean Justice AI or OEA. I've also left like a storyline there as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm up to date on my LinkedIn. I'm up to date on my TikTok. I'm up to date on my Instagram. Science communication is, it is what it is, now. AI, it is what it is. It's here. We have to utilize or use as a resource because it's here and it makes things a little bit easier. But I tell you what, I've always said this, nothing beats the experience, the
Yeah.
hands-on experience. Hey, I'm a Gen X and this is something I grew up with. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time now, I know our studio, I know Python, I know these other things that are, I guess, new age, but also help to share the results,
Mm-hmm.
help to share the knowledge as well. And it keeps me young. I think mentorship, it keeps me being young. And so don't be afraid to reach out. And so Catherine, you have my information. If
Mm-hmm.
anyone wants to reach out, I mean, that's what I do.
Right.
That's what
And
I
you
do.
can share
Yeah.
those links as well.
Yes, of course. I mean, I'm
I will
not just,
post them.
yeah, I'm the local library. I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing something in July.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the first time I've been doing this for a while. I mean, every other day,
Mm-hmm.
come the end of the semester, all the middle schoolers, I mean, 7 buses, all the middle schoolers.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I love doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing the information, sharing the knowledge,
Awesome.
whether it be students from the Caribbean, students from the US, students from Africa as well. I'm global. So, I'm just, my little time here on this side, I'm going to share it. Yeah. I'll share the information as best as I can.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow. Well, Dr. Belford, thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
joining today. And I want to let everyone know if you like this episode and want to, know when there are future episodes. So please like and subscribe so you can, hear when the next one is. Thank you. Thank you again.
Awesome.